And now, Virgin Most Powerful Radio is pleased to present Hands-On Apologetics with renowned Catholic author and apologist, Gary Michuta.
And welcome, everybody. Hands-On Apologetics. You have entered into Virgin Most Powerful's Apologetics Dojo. And it's good to be with you today. And got a great show in store for you indeed. We are going to have Christine Flynn come on the show. As you remember, Christine was on the show a few weeks ago. And she is the head of an awesome Catholic website called thecatholicmama.com, and where she blogs and she has a podcast ministry, all sorts of cool stuff. In fact, earlier this week I was actually her guest, and we're talking about, of all things, the Deuterocanon. So she's going to be coming on, and the topic I think is a very important topic, one that maybe many of you are experiencing right now, or perhaps you know somebody. Maybe you work in church with RCIA or something like that, and sometimes somebody is moved by God's grace to embrace Christ in His fullness in His church, and sometimes, their husband or wife isn't on the same track. And what do you do in those cases when you have an unbelieving spouse? So Christine, who herself is a convert to Catholicism, is going to share with us, her own experience. Being with an unbelieving spouse, helping that spouse perhaps gently see the light of truth, and who knows, maybe it'll also lead to their conversion. So she's going to come on and give some practical tips. That's going to be coming up on the other side of the first break. But before we begin with the rest of the announcements, why don't I give my shout-outs to all those watching Facebook and YouTube. Hello, everybody. Greetings. Yes, it's great to see you guys. Also, I want to thank all of you listening and Catholic radio and other radio stations around the United States and around the world. Thank you for tuning in and listening through podcast. Let's see. Let's break things up a little bit. Let's talk about the Finding the Fallacy. As you know, usually on Fridays, I try to switch things up a little bit. Most radio talk shows on Fridays, they'll have something special. They'll do something different that's out of the norm. And so usually, though it's not radically different, it still is different. It's we change our Finding the Fallacy. Instead of looking at informal fallacies, we look at propaganda techniques. And propaganda technique that we're going to look at today is called card stacking. And we also meet an early church father. The early church father for today is actually Council of the Church. It is the Council of Ephesus that met at AD 431. So lots of interesting stuff, propaganda, church council, and of course, Christine Flynn coming up on the other side of the break. And by the way, if you have any questions for Christine, maybe you're in that situation and would like some advice, or maybe you're somebody who is in that situation and you would like to know, maybe have some questions about how to help them, give us a call toll-free at 888-526-2151. That is 888-526-2151. And also, you can always email us. Yes, the Dojo mailbox is open 24/7. Send us an email at questions@handsonapologetics.com. It's question@handsonapologetics.com, and I do answer the emails. So great to hear from you, the listeners. And let's see. I forgot to mention our website. I always make it a point every episode to mention this, because that way you can access, maybe you can't listen to the whole show if you're listening on radio, but you can listen via podcast. And the flagship website for Virgin Most Powerful Radio is virginmostpowerfulradio.org. Easy to remember. It's all one word, no dashes or dots or anything other than the .org at the end. And, just go to our show, scroll down to Hands-On Apologetics or whatever show you'd like to listen to, and bang, you have all the programs there. You have the ability to share and so on and so forth. And please do, tell people the programs here on Virgin Most Powerful Radio. The more the merrier. and the more, that can benefit. So please keep up the great work. I really do appreciate all of you who have been promoting the show and, spreading the word about the program. I truly, truly appreciate it. All right, so let's jump to the finding the fallacy today, which actually is a propaganda technique. It is card stacking. Now, it has nothing to do with playing gin rummy or something like that. Card stacking is a propaganda technique that seeks to manipulate audience perception of an issue by emphasizing one side and repressing another. Such emphasis may achieve through media bias or the use of one-sided testimonies or simply by censoring voices of critics. So that's really important. It's a propaganda technique where, for example, they laud all the great things about something and they deliberately suppress critical information. And I think that last part is the most important part. Because quite frankly, everybody has a right to say favorable things or even unfavorable things about stuff. And that's fine and dandy. And you can always present, your best side to people. But to deliberately suppress or repress information that's critical of the position, that could be stacking the cards, because what it does is it gives a false impression or perception of the audience in one direction or another. And you definitely see this, by the way, with coercive cults. Coercive cults will deliberately ignore or even flat out deny certain things that are substantial criticisms against them. So many times these groups will forbid their membership from reading any kind of material that's critical of the organization. I'm thinking like Jehovah's Witnesses. They're forbidden from accepting so-called apostate material. And by doing that, by suppressing critical information that's critical of the organization, it is a way of manipulating a person into seeing things a certain way. So be aware of that. You should always at least concede, whenever you can, or acknowledge whenever there's something that is against your argument. And try to be balanced. That's basically what you do to avoid committing this propaganda technique, which is card stacking. All right. Why don't we jump to the Meet the Early Church Father today? We got a lot to talk about because this is not just an individual, but a whole council. The Council of Ephesus, which met in AD 431. The first and second ecumenical councils at Nicaea in 325 and at Constantinople in 381 AD had defended the divinity of Christ and of the Holy Spirit respectively, and their consubstantiality with the Father. Now, as theological explanation progressed in the area of Christ, namely Christology, it became necessary to define more clearly the relationship between the divine and the human natures in Christ. So, and we're getting this, by the way, from Jurgen's Faith of the Early Fathers. And this developing, there's two schools, theological schools in the ancient church that clashed in regards to trying to get a clear understanding of the relationship between the divine and human natures of Christ. One school was the Antiochian school, headed by Nestorius, and the other one was the Alexandrian school, headed by Cyril of Alexandria. Now, Nestorius failed to sufficiently intimate the union between the natures of Christ. And though he did speak of one person in Christ, he did in effect hold that Christ, the incarnate Word, was actually two persons. And he did this because of Aristotle, who believed that you couldn't have there could be no nature without a person. So Jesus has two natures. In a sense, he should be two persons. And that was his error there. So this led him to deny that Mary is mother of God, Theotokos, and instead he called her Christotokos, or mother of Christ, because she did not give birth to the divine person. She gave birth to the human person. Now, on the other side of the table, you have Cyril of Alexandria, and his terminology was also a bit defective, because when he spoke of Christ having one nature, and if in this context nature he meant by person, then there's no problem. But it wasn't very clear, so it kind of also supported, or it could be used by I should say, a heresy known as Monophysitism, which claimed that Jesus did not have two natures but one divine/human nature, a kind of mixture of the two. So the problem with Nestorius' theology and his preaching was referred to Rome, where Nestorius had already been suspect by the Pope for giving refuge to a Pelagian heretic named Cecilius. With Rome's decision of going against him, Nestorius invited Emperor Theodosius II to convoke a third ecumenical council, which met in Ephesus on Pentecost 431. And it's a bit of a messy council. Nestorius arrived at Ephesus with 16 of his suffragans, closely followed by Cyril with 50 of his bishops, and John, the Patriarch of Antioch and Nestorian sympathizer, deliberately postponed his own arrival. And by the way, meantime, the three papal legates were delayed because of storms at sea. So Cyril of Alexandria, given the impression that because of the circumstance he would be the papal representative, opened the council on June 22nd over the protest of 68 bishops, and he eventually condemns Nestorianism. Excuse me. So Ephesus is where we have the definition that Mary is indeed the mother of God. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our Meet the Early Church Father today, who is not an individual person, but the council of Ephesus. Coming up on the other side of the break, we're going to chat with Christine Flynn about converting unbelieving spouses. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Leviticus 11:44 says, "Consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am holy." St. Vincent Pallotti said, "You must be holy in the way God asks you to be holy." God does not ask you to be a Trappist monk or a hermit. He wants you to sanctify the world and your everyday life. May God show us the path to holiness and help us to follow it all the days of our life.
Did you know my mom's gonna have a baby?
She is?
Will it be a boy?
Or will it be a girl?
We don't know yet, but we heard the heartbeat and my dad said this is gonna be someone very special.
You mean like being a president? Or maybe a doctor?
Well, probably maybe like a singer or dancer, I think.
Hello, my name is Mary Ann Koharski. I'm the director of Pro-Life Across America. We know that every baby is a miracle and has the potential to do great things. If you know someone who is pregnant or in need of alternatives or assistance, or would like to support the work of Pro-Life Across America, please call 1-800-366-7773 or visit our website at prolifeacrossamerica.org. Pro-Life Across America is non-political and totally educational.
Pro-Life Across America, the Billboard people.
This is Terry Barber. I want to thank you for your support here at Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Here's an easy way to do it. If you're going to sell or buy a house, call Real Estate for Life, 877-543-3871, because they're going to get you a Christ-centered agent to purchase your home or to sell your home. And at the close of escrow, a portion of his commission goes right back to Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Call 877-543-3871. Thank you so much for your support.
Now, back to Hands-on Apologetics with Gary Machuda. If you'd like to join the conversation, call 888-526-2151. Here's Gary.
And welcome back, everybody, to Hands-on Apologetics. Well, if you are maybe being called to a deeper relationship with Christ, a deeper union with Him, perhaps you're being called to enter into the fullness of Christ in this church, Sometimes spouses aren't lockstep with you. Perhaps your spouse doesn't seem to have that call, or is not very interested, or perhaps you just have an unbelieving spouse. What do? How can you help your spouse kind of get on board with discovering the fullness of Christ? Well, to help us work through that, we have Christine Flynn. Christine, by the way, is the Catholic mama. She's a wife and mother of 4, and as a convert to the faith, Christine podcasts and blogs about all things Catholicism to help parents and feel more secure in the faith and raise confident Catholic children. You can head to her website, by the way, which is thecatholicmama, all one word, .com, to grab a free ebook, by the way, that says the title is How to Talk to Your Kids About God, which helps parents answer tough theological questions simply and truthfully. And Christine Flynn, welcome to Hands on Apologetics.
Thanks for having me back. This is fun to be here again.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned at the beginning of the program that we spoke just a few days ago on your podcast.
Yes, and I put it up, and it's gotten, at least of recent episodes, it's gotten the most downloads. So well done, Gary. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you.
And now I was realizing I've talked to you twice. I've talked to you more than my own mother this week.
Oh, that's not good. Just talking to me repeatedly is not good.
It sounds like our refrigerator went kaput last night, so I did call her to ask advice on what to do. I don't know. If something breaks in the house, you call your mom.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Since our audience may not be familiar with your backstory and your ministry, would you mind maybe just take a couple of minutes and kind of share where you came from and what you're doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a household being raised by former Catholics who really were maybe poorly catechized or I don't know, but they left the faith before I was even born, so I was never baptized. But as I got a little bit older, New Age stuff started infiltrating the home here and there. And I, without any good religious authority, I just started piecing things together, astrology and horoscopes or, stars aligning, whatever, reincarnation. I mean, add all the New Age stuff just started piling on, and anything that sounded good, I just kind of tucked under my wing and added it to my collection, my prized collection of random beliefs. But then over time, I mean, these beliefs I had, and really just constant searching for validation that I was somebody special because I was in tune with the universe in various ways, crystals or tarot cards, who knows? Over time, it didn't answer the questions of, why is there suffering? Why is there evil? Why do bad things happen to good people? And around the time that I started wondering these questions and feeling like I didn't have any good answers, and I wanted the good to win, but it seemed like the evil in the world, in the universe, if there was equal forces of good and evil, seemed to be winning. And around that time, I met my husband, Pat, who is on your show every once in a while, and
Yep.
And he was an atheist. And so it took very little convincing, because he's a very smart guy, for me to just assume that he had done more research than I had and knew better. And I was already feeling pretty cynical anyway. And so I just adopted the atheism that he had introduced me to, and eventually went into nihilism. It probably wasn't a lot of fun to be around at this point. But it wasn't, but then I had kids. And as it seems like it's kind of common for women who may be questioning or not believing in God, when you have a child, it changes everything. And I loved especially my firstborn. I had never been a mother before, and I was just so overwhelmed and about the unexpected love I felt for him that I wanted so desperately to believe that there was something else, that I'm not just taking care of this beautiful little baby, and I'm not spending all these hours, nursing and changing diapers and, what have you, only to have us, die in less than 100 years and be dust after that. And that would be it. We'd never see each other again. And so I was in this strange limbo between starting to be pretty despondent. I was definitely in a place of despair, but also just hoping that something was out there that would make this right. And my husband had started his own conversion journey, and he kind of went in the opposite direction, where he had been atheist most of his life, and then kind of getting into some spiritual ideas, and then finally coming to the Catholic faith. Well, I was the opposite. And I had been spiritual but not religious first. And so he started on his journey, and I was just very cynical and skeptical about the whole thing. And but he through his prayers and just seeing how he had changed, I started opening up a little bit to the idea of maybe I would be Catholic too, or at least maybe I could believe in Christ. I don't know. This seemed kind of crazy. But once I opened my heart even just a little bit to the Holy Spirit, he made quick work of me, and I very quickly became a Catholic after telling my husband there was no way and I would never be Catholic. I was very adamant that I would never be Catholic. Probably within 2 months I was Catholic.
Wow.
So it was very quick. And I've always been a person who just knows my mind, and I just knew my mind was the wrong ideas were in my mind for a long time. And this truth really settled in fast. So I became Catholic. I was baptized Easter Vigil in 2018, confirmed just last June. I think Pentecost was in June last year. So 2019. But I was quickly realizing, our kids, we had 3 of our kids at this point by the time we converted, and they all got baptized at the same day. Everybody thought we had triplets, but we were late to the party, and we're baptizing 3 kids on the same day. And my oldest remembers when we weren't going to church. And so he had a lot of great questions, which kids tend to have really, really good questions when it comes to the meaning of life and the problem of suffering and evil and all this stuff. So I started researching and making sure I had good answers for him. And I was just on fire. Converts are a lot of times. I was just really excited about the faith. And so I decided to start a podcast, and I haven't looked back since. And I'm about at 100 full episodes almost of my podcast. I've been doing it for about 2 years now.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah.
I made it past like the 7-episode hump.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. And also you have a free ebook, How to Talk to Your Kids About God. So a lot of that is actual experience, isn't it?
Yes. Because my son was asking all these great questions. And if I wasn't prepared and if I didn't know the answers from like a really good like grown-up stance, it was hard to filter it down into a very satisfying and accurate but age-appropriate response for my child.
Right.
So I put some thought into it, and I was collecting these questions. And the ones that seemed to come up a lot that we talked a lot about, I think I wound up putting maybe 10 questions in the ebook and just putting it together. I figured that's a good starting point, because I was in a women's Bible study at my parish at the time, and several women, we go around the table asking how our weeks were at the beginning. Several women say, my kid asked this question again. I feel like I failed in answering it. And I was like, oh, okay, I can help.
Nice.
So I put that ebook together as a way to, those questions that the kids are asking are just really fundamental ones that lots of people question and struggle with. Why do bad guys exist? That's the problem of suffering and evil. I mean, especially in our current climate is really a big one for people. So I put in a good, grown-up answer that would satisfy the adults that might be reading it, or older children perhaps. And then kind of a more, stripped down but still very accurate answer for children, and then also resources. So, hey, you might want to read this part of the Summa if you want answers to this question, or check this saint out if you want to get an answer to that question, something like that.
Nice. Yeah. And those questions I think are the hardest ones. Is the ones that kids pick up. The other stuff like, was Peter the Rock or, something like that. That's easy, but kids have some very profound questions, or they're so out of the box that you just never consider things from that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even it's been interesting. My kids will ask, like we were learning about George Washington or whatever. They'll ask if he's in heaven. I'm like, well, he's not Catholic, so suddenly
right.
I'm going through this. I'm like, how do I answer this question? Because and my husband and I are both very committed to giving answers to our kids that, when they get older and they look back, and also, hopefully we're still having all these conversations as they get older, but they don't feel like we ever tricked them. Or we ever just gave them a quick answer and we didn't really care about the answer, the questions, or what they were curious about. So we've really tried hard to really dive deep. And of course, we are at an advantage just because Pat is so good with the philosophical stuff. And when it comes to the theological and especially prayer life and living the faith, that's my strong suit. So between the two of us, we are very blessed to cover a lot of ground for our kids.
Yeah, indeed. And boy, I tell you, it's great work you've been doing. And the nice thing is you're able to pull your experience to help others, with the CatholicMama.com podcast. And also your husband, Pat, with Chronicles of Strength is also kind of branching out into exploring theology in addition to working out and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see how I've been helping him with his business since we met almost a decade ago. And it was always very superficial at the beginning when we started because it was just about working out. But, as we've grown in our faith, he realized he was talking about different ways to, I don't know, do an exercise can get boring after a while. And there's only so much we can do. But with thousands of years of church history, there's so much to talk about. And
I know.
And bring it all together because, we, as Catholics, we are called to excellence in a way. And we can use the body to get to that level of excellence that we're called to. Yeah.
And, I love your story because, like I said, the spouses aren't always on the same page by God's providence, so he allows things like that. So, like, you were religious, or excuse me, you're, what do I want to say? Spiritual, but not religious, so kind of new agey thing. And then you meet Pat, who's an atheist. So what was his reaction to that? Did he think it was interesting, or do you think it was just a waste of time?
That's really interesting. I don't know. I was wondering about that the other day. I should ask him point blank. I mean, he would listen to me. And I remember at one point, the whole crux of the spiritual but not religious new age stuff is that I have special information, me. So it becomes very narcissistic, very egotistical. Mm-hmm. And I remember at one point when he started kind of getting interested in whatever else might be out there. I was like, look, if you have any questions, you can come to me. I know all about it. Like I just told him point blank that I had experiences and I knew, don't bother, reading books. Just trust me on this. Just come to me. How egotistical is that? I know nothing. Yeah. I'd read a couple books, So I think he just, I don't even know if he listened. He was very good at tuning things out. Who knows if he actually listened to me when I said any of this. But I also was at that point was also pretty, I was just kind of just getting disenfranchised with the whole new agey stuff anyway. So I don't know if I really talked about it much. And it wasn't long after we got together that I just gave up on God completely.
Yeah, very good. Okay, well, let's talk about spouses on the other side of the break. We're with Christine Flynn, and we're talking about, how to help your non-believing spouse, introduce them to the faith. Stay tuned, folks. More to come.
Christ's message of love, mercy, and compassion is for all of humanity. The Last Days, the Passion and Death of Jesus the Christ, is a live passion play being performed in Los Angeles and is an opportunity to get up close and personal to Jesus Christ during the season of Lent. Hi, I'm Jonathan Rumi, and I play Jesus Christ, and I'd like to invite you to join us on April 4th, 5th, and Good Friday, April 10th, at Emmanuel Presbyterian Church in Koreatown for this special presentation. If you're not able to attend the play in person, please consider supporting the ministry by making a donation to help us ensure Christ's message is brought to the world through the arts. For more information, again, go to www.thelastdayspassionplay.com and find, follow, and share us on social media, on Instagram @The Last Days of Jesus, and on Facebook @The Last Days of Jesus Passion Play. Thank you so much, and God bless.
This is Terry Barber. I want to thank you for supporting Virgin Most Powerful Radio. And here's an easy way to support us by going to smile.amazon.com and type in Catholic Resource Center or Virgin Most Powerful Radio. And when you log in your Amazon account and you purchase products, a portion of it will go right back in supporting Virgin Most Powerful Radio. And it doesn't cost you a dime. I want to thank you ahead of time because that supports us year-round. May God bless you and your family.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow! That's 80%! realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
This is Jesse Romero. You're listening to Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Machuda on Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
And welcome, everybody. We are chatting with Christine Flynn about how to evangelize, how to convert a non-believing spouse. And, well, Christine, let's jump right into it. Your own experience. Actually, your spouse was a believer and you were an unbeliever.
Yeah, I was going to say, people listening in might think I was the one evangelizing by first listening to that title of our segment, but no, It was the other way around. I was the very, very reluctant spouse, and my husband was the blossoming believer at that point. And so I can talk from the perspective of what worked for me, his tactics that actually worked. So, and here we are. I am so excited about Catholicism, so it worked.
Right. So it's not what you think would work when you were talking to your spouse. It's actually what worked on you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's even more valuable.
It really is, because I mean, this isn't just conjecture. Now, Pat, I should say, is very good with marketing and spin. I won't say spin, but just presenting a good message. He's so good at it, and so he was able to read. I mean, he knows me. I'm his spouse and his wife, and so anybody who's listening, who's trying to evangelize your spouse, I mean, your spouse the best. You know exactly what would grind their gears, what would make them open their hearts a little bit. So it really, a lot of it comes down to your personalities and relationship as it is. And Pat just knew me so well that he knew how to present things.
Yeah, and that's important because this isn't a one-size-fits-all, practical advice. You really do have to know your spouse, and chances are you do, right?
Yes.
So you can customize, what we're talking about to your situation.
Yeah. I mean, I was at the gym not too long ago, and I saw a husband and wife, or boyfriend and girlfriend, trying to work out together, and it just got more and more tense as they went along. One person was telling the other one what to do, and no, they were doing it wrong. And as I was sitting, I was like, that's just for anything, whether you're trying to convert your spouse or tell your husband how to do the correct pull-up or whatever it is. Don't try not to butt heads and really go after the ego and I'm right. It really comes down to that for any evangelization effort. You're not trying to win an argument. You're trying to save a soul.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So what were some of the things that Pat did that really moved you?
It was tough because he was really coming up against. I'm a very stubborn person naturally, and I had already. There were a lot of. What's funny is I've had so many people say, "You just seem so easygoing," and Pat will laugh. Yeah. I am mostly, but there are times and it's just my ego will flare up, and I can be so bullish. But it's getting better. It is getting better. I think Pat would also agree with that. I'm not just patting myself on the back. But I had so many layers of cynicism and skepticism over the years. My mom would send me something nice for the kids for 4th of July, and I would brush it off oh, just meaningless holiday. Everything is just. My life was just devoid of meaning, and I'd become a no person. That was the first word out of my mouth when somebody would ask me to do something, or if I was interested in something. No, no, thanks. No. And so Pat had his work cut out for him because I was so, I was so cynical, and I just didn't want to be bothered. What was the point? This is all going to end. We're all going to die, and there's nothingness. So why bother? Attitude. I was just becoming very negative. So, all that had to happen, I should say that as he was coming into his conversion, I was also starting to slightly be tired of being cynical all the time. So I think a holiday came around. It could have been Memorial Day. or 4th of July, and my mom had sent her. She always sends a little box of goodies for the kids, and I don't know. I was tired of scoffing at everything and just brushing everything off. And I remember at that point, like something had switched. There's a slight crack that some light could get through. And so by the time that Pat was really getting interested in Christianity, I was still very much a no person, and I was still very skeptical. I told him, I know enough about Jesus Christ, and he's not for me. He might be a good middleman for some other person, but I have things figured out. I gave him a try once, and that was good enough. Which, I mean, honestly, I'd never really given him a try. I didn't know anything about Christ. Now that I know something, now I know I knew nothing. But there was some slight crack in the exterior. If Pat had come to me 2 years earlier and tried to talk to me about Christ, I would have completely shut down. So I think that a big point of what worked is that, one, he played the long game. So he had been kind of moving towards Christianity for longer than I even knew. But he just kept it quietly to himself and read his books and did his research and prayed about things. And because if he had come right at me at it, I would have just shut him right down. And as it is, he still waited until I wasn't quite so cynical, and I still shut him down a lot about becoming Christian. But he was just patient. And I asked him recently if he was praying for me that whole time, and he said absolutely. So I think the first two things that really worked is prayer and patience. He had a lot of both for me, and without that, I don't think we would have gotten very far very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Prayer is so important because it's really the work of God, the work of grace in your heart that changes your heart and transforms your life. It's not arguments. And, being an apologist, it's so easy to forget that very important element and think, oh boy, if I just hit my spouse with this perfect argument, then they would have to convert.
So I got him there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So just a lot of patience on his part. And then, I think that those are the two biggest ones. From there on out, it really depends where your spouse's hangups are. Pat knew mine because as we would go for walks, we would put our kids in the child care room at the YMCA and go for a walk on the indoor track. And we would walk for an hour a couple times a week. And he was starting to talk about Christianity a lot. And I was getting kind of nervous that he was going to ask me to go to church or something like that. And I really didn't want to make that step. But he just, he knew what my hangups were because of all that time that we had spent talking. And so he knew that I didn't really understand that Christ was a real historical person. I kind of thought that maybe it was just a myth of some kind, and then I also didn't understand. I had a lot of hangups about Catholicism just because of the household that I grew up in. Very loving, wonderful, strong foundation of a house, a family, but just over time just became increasingly anti-religious and specifically just no thanks to Catholicism. We'll do our thing. They just stay. Those church people can stay over there. So I was pretty anti-Catholic. I thought it was just a pomp and circumstance and a lot of authority that was meaningless and just wanted to control people. So he, very specifically, he knew my issues. And since he is a very avid reader, he was able to say, I think you might be interested in this book. It's a history book. It's written by an investigative journalist. And I was like, oh, my ears perked up a little bit. So, I mean, he really, because he's my husband and we've been together for a number of years now, he knew what was interesting to me. And he just, subtly, it wasn't just, hey, you need to read this. We need to have this conversation. You need to come up, you need to take a stance. Are you a Christian? Or are you not? This is, but it was just subtle. Here's a book. I think you might like it.
Yeah, and I don't know if our listeners are familiar with this, but you're a writer by trade, so to have a book that was written by a journalist is kind of that's a little bit of an inducement on its own.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And the book is The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, specifically is the one that got me because this was an investigative journalist who. Him and his wife were atheists. His wife converted to Christianity, and he was so upset by this that he tried to investigate Christ in order to bring her back to atheism and prove to her this was all bunk. And I was like, wow, I'm an atheist still. Pat left me there in that pit of atheism and despair. I'm angry about that. We had been atheists together, which is very funny to me that I would have been angry that he left me to become a Christian, and he left me in my atheism, because it doesn't matter anyway. We're all alone in that viewpoint. I shouldn't have cared.
That's true.
It just goes to show that this pull towards the divine, the pull towards God, is really innate in all of us. And, those questions, we have them when we're little kids. Our kids asking really cool theological and philosophical questions as kids. It just shows that this stuff is innate, and we all have that pull there. It's just other stuff that gets in the way.
Yeah. So if Pat started pressuring you at the beginning, I imagine you probably look at him like, oh, great, now he's turned into some sort of Jesus freak and
exactly
gone off the deep end.
Yeah, I grew up in the Bible Belt, North Carolina, and there were times I remember driving off campus from high school, and on nice days, if you had your window down, the car window, there would be people standing right off of school property so they couldn't get in trouble, and they would have mini Bibles, and they would try to toss it through the car windows, the open windows.
Oh, really?
Wow. Yeah. I just
help people
how many
with Bibles.
times can you believe? I mean, it's just so ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I got asked a lot, have you accepted Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, and all these. It was just always so pushy. And when I was in high school around then, or early college, the what would Jesus do silicone bracelets were really big. And everybody seemed to be wearing a WWJD bracelet. And there was just like this very pop culture-y, I don't know, Bible Belt Christianity that I just really wanted nothing to do with it. It had left a really sour taste in my mouth, especially having been told by numerous people growing up that the rapture was coming and I would be sent straight to hell. I was like, no. I mean, if Pat had really pushed hard and didn't lead me gently, there's no way. I just would have dug my heels in further, which I was very good at doing at the time. I've since gotten better since I've become a Catholic of letting things go and not being so stubborn. But he was really working with a very stubborn, negative person, and he managed to, again, I had opened myself up just enough that the Holy Spirit had something to work with willingly when Pat started giving me some more information about Christianity and then Catholicism.
Yeah, very good. And that small crack was enough for God to work, and ultimately it led to bigger and greater things. So
yeah, and one of the things I did notice too, because when we were first exploring just I should wait. I can hear the music.
Yeah, hold that thought. We'll get back
okay.
on your side.
I'm going to remember it.
All right. We're chatting with Christine Flynn from thecatholicmama.com. Check it out, folks. And we're talking about, evangelizing unbelieving spouses. More to come on the other side of the break. Stay tuned.
Help the Helpless, a Minnesota St. Paul nonprofit organization chaired by Father of Tear and volunteers, is humbly asking you for your kind support to help the poor and the handicapped children in India and Ecuador. Through financial support from the Help of the Helpless benefactors, the children are provided with clothing, food, education, shelter, and the teachings of the Catholic Church. The mission is to help children thrive and become self-sufficient young adults leading productive lives. We also provide aid to poor families in Ecuador with food baskets, medicines, medical assistance, and help with funeral needs for the deceased. The work in India is done by Father Antonio's organization, St. Mary's. In Ecuador, the work is being done by the Servant Sisters of the Home of Mother. You can call us at 877-762-8857. To learn more, please visit our website, www.helpthehelpless.org. God bless you.
Jesus said in Matthew 26, "Stay awake and pray that you may not enter into temptation." According to St. Ephrem, Jesus, who feared nothing, experienced fear and asked to be freed from death, although he knew it was impossible. how much more must we persevere in prayer before temptation assails us, so that we may be freed when the test has come. May God grant that we may withstand temptation and carry out His will in all things.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow! That's 80%! realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
This is Jesse Romero. You're listening to Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Machuda on Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
And welcome back, everybody. We're chatting with Christine Flynn of thecatholicmama.com and talk about evangelizing your unbelieving spouse. And Christine, you were just starting a point and the break came up. So
I jotted it down because mom brain is very real and I thought I would forget. But I know what it is.
Yeah, awesome.
So when we were in the process of converting, and we were baseline Christians at first. Catholicism was a no-go for me, especially for a while. And Pat had offered, we can try out different churches. That's pretty common for just Christians in general to, they could hop around from denomination to denomination. And he's like, we lived in a part of Pennsylvania that had a lot of Quakers. I was like, well, we could go to a Quaker meeting. And, so he at first was very open. He's like, you pick. He had given me the reins to choose this. And he's like, I would like to try a Catholic mass at some point. And I just made a face, my face scrunched up. But I was like, that's fair. If you're going to let me pick all these other ones, I guess we can go to a Catholic church or something. Started grumbling a little bit. So, now if you're Catholic, of course, you're not going to say, well, we can try the Lutheran church if you'd like, or you pick, But there's a point there in that, you can let that person lead. If they're starting to become willing to engage at all in any form of the Catholic mass and the religion in general, you can let them lead. Adoration is something, or, do you want to go to a daily mass? We could sit in the back. You don't have to do anything. We could just go. You can let them pick how they engage at first. And it also could be as simple as, what worked for me was the Catholicism series that Bishop Robert Barron created. Pat would have that playing, and the music was so nice, and the cinematography was so beautiful, and Bishop Barron just has a very ecumenical way of speaking that I would walk by the television set in the evening and I would, backpedal a little bit. Oh, I guess I'll sit down and watch this. And it was just this very gentle way of just kind of the Catholicism just started coming into the house without me saying yes to it necessarily, but I also didn't feel like I had to say no because it wasn't pushy. It's just that my husband likes to read a lot, and suddenly Catholic books are coming and getting delivered from Amazon. And instead of just watching a rerun of Everybody Loves Raymond one night, then suddenly the Catholicism series is on. Or I think eventually Mother Angelica was a good one to have on too for me because she's just so funny. Reruns of her on YouTube. True. Yeah, she's got such a sharp wit, and it was just a lot of fun to listen to her, even if I wasn't fully Catholic yet. So it's just these ways of evangelizing that he did without really saying anything, which I think is really important, because a lot of times the hangups that somebody might have about Catholicism, they're straw men. They're just caricatures of the faith. And, plenty of people think that they hate Catholicism, but they don't actually know. Once they know what Catholicism is, they realize how good and truthful it is. And so a lot of times we're just battling the caricatures of the faith in the culture at large, amongst our friends, or maybe even our husband or wife. So it was just of kind of showing the truth very quietly that really worked.
Yeah, so not necessarily, confronting misunderstandings as much as kind of allowing the beauty and truth of the church to work on you.
Yeah, just kind of steeping us in it. And now, we do that with our friends now who are non-Catholic. Our home looks I hope it looks more Catholic. I mean, we have a holy water font by the front door as you want to, as you leave. You can dip your hands in. We have a cross wall. Lots of, we have crucifixes, a picture of Mary, and every room I think has a portrait of the Blessed Mother in some form. Yeah. We have the books around. On given certain days, you might come in and there might be Gregorian chant playing. I mean, it's like it's just there, and we don't push it on anybody, and the same. It's just a gentle leading. And if somebody has a question, and we'll answer it, and we don't shy away from mentioning that we're going to Mass or mentioning our beliefs. And it's just in the same way that Pat did that for me initially. It was just, again, this gentle leading in and by environment.
Yeah, and making it just part of you, just an authentic part of the way you live and the way you work your life. People are friends already like you, so that kind of comes with the package. So they come to visit you, and they're surrounded by holy pictures and holy music, and it's not. Yeah. You're not throwing a Bible through an open window.
No, goodness. Yeah, actually, Pat was kind of chuckling because I was taking off the cardigan sweater I had on during the day since it's still quite chilly in Wisconsin, and I was taking things out of the pockets in my cardigan. He was laughing because I was taking off. I had a scapular that I took off. I took off my crucifix that has a necklace that has an immaculate medal on it. I'm putting that down. I pull a rosary out of my pocket. I pull a Sacred Heart badge out of my pocket. I was just like unloading everything. And he's like, wow, don't you look Catholic? I just had all this, all my prayer stuff. And those are just small, subtle ways that, outward signs of what's happening internally that can help guide people, even if you don't say much of anything.
Right. Yeah. Although I don't think this is part of your experience, but I do know this happens, is sometimes when a spouse is on the journey, the other one isn't, sometimes that the person who's on the journey becomes so involved in learning about the faith and doing Christian stuff that the non-believing spouse almost feels like they're being cheated on, that they're pushing for attention. Any ideas on that?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that there's we're called as believers to get ourselves and our spouse and our children to heaven. Yeah. And so by leaving not leaving, but putting the faith forward so much that you're putting your spouse behind you is not doing anybody any favors, and is really a detriment to the home. I mean, the family is called the domestic church, and so we have to. Sometimes I think it's St. Francis of Rome who had said this, that sometimes you have to, put down your rosary. I'm paraphrasing horribly, but say you have to, you're praying the rosary. Sometimes you have to put that down and pray and love God through doing the dishes or whatever it is. Mm. So we can't neglect our families for the faith either. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's
that's just a point of prudence that and it is, especially if you're newer to the faith, say, and you're so excited about it, you just want to steep yourself in it, and you just got to make sure that you're not leaving somebody behind along that path.
Yeah. So when Patrick's started changing his mind on atheism and then eventually looking into Christianity and Catholicism, did he? You said he was praying for you, of course, and. He was very patient, but did he share any of that along the journey, or did he keep it to himself unless you asked?
He kept it to himself. I actually didn't. It didn't even dawn on me to wonder if he was praying for me until maybe a month or two ago. I was like, hey, wait a minute. This whole prayer is so important. We pray for each other now all the time. Were you praying for me then? And kind of smiled. He's like, yeah, all the time. Yeah. So, and who knows? I'm hoping. One of the things that I'm most looking forward to. God willing, if I get to heaven, is to find out who was praying for me there too, because it seems like it has to be to turn somebody as stubborn as me. It's got to be a whole team of people working.
Yeah. And that's good advice too. Like if you're praying for your spouse, don't be like pointing at them or staring at them as you're on your knees praying. God hears your prayers. You don't have to send a message. This guy
that needs, him. This is the one. And we're part of a family catechesis type program at our parish. And sometimes it's just the parents that meet together and talk. And there are a number of spouses who go or a number of people who go whose spouses are non-believers or just aren't interested in learning more about the faith. And it is hard for them, and they will mention that. So I think, we have so many saints that give us hope that things can turn around. I always love St. Monica. And St. Augustine is such a classic story that even if we can't see it right away, we just don't know. And at the very least, even if, say, you are suffering because your spouse is not Catholic or refusing to even consider the church, you never know what will happen internally for yourself and for them if you continue to live the faith to its fullest. You are making sure that you're getting to heaven, at least, by living the faith. And then it could be, years down the line where there's even just a last moment conversion. That's worth it.
Yeah.
So don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged, even if it doesn't happen. I've prayed for the past 2 years for the conversion of people in my family, and I haven't seen anything. But I'm not discouraged. I'm just still very, very hopeful. So the same goes for spouses.
Yeah, that's a very profound point, because I've seen that as well, where somebody will have an unbelieving spouse, and they become walking saints, like so holy, because they're praying for them, they're laying down their lives for them, doing penance and stuff for them, and they grow in holiness exponentially, even though the spouse might not be moved, or at least you can't visibly see it being moved, right?
Yeah, right. And again, this is all the long game. So even we are very blessed in our Catholic faith to have redemptive suffering, that concept of redemptive suffering. So suffering is never worthless for us. There's meaning to all of it. And so even if we suffer because our spouse will not go to church, and or we feel like that's not a good influence on our children who are trying to grow in faith, but they see, the husband or wife not going to church on Sundays, and we're frustrated, we can grow, again, like you said, we can grow in that holiness and be practically, walking saints because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, I can't believe our time has flown. This has been so much fun, very informative too. Christine, where can people go to check out your podcast and your blog and everything?
Right. So thecatholicmama.com, MAMA for mama. And then also the same name, The Catholic Mama, on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, Podbean, all of those. I can easily be found there. And I put up full-length episodes twice a week. And even Pat and I have started our own segment that we just do once a week together, because we figured we can't always get out for a date and get a babysitter to watch all 4 kids. So we'll just podcast together.
There we go. A dating podcast.
That's right. The husband and wife who podcast together stay together, something like that. And then I also go through the Catholic Catechism. How many times people wish that there was a handbook for life, and that is the catechism. So I go through that in about 5 to 10 minutes, little bits every Friday.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. All
right, that's Christine Flynn, and the site, ladies and gentlemen, is thecatholicmama.com, all one word. Check it out. Great stuff. And man, I can't believe the hour has flown. It's time for me to shut down the Midwest Command Center here and turn down the dojo lights, but never fear, God willing, we'll be back again Monday. Do this thing called Hands on Apologetics. Coming up next, High Impact Catholic Talk, coming at you with the Terry and Jesse Show. So thank you so much for tuning in, folks, and I hope everybody has a blessed weekend. Bye-bye, everybody.
In the 1990s, I lived and worked in Hollywood. But when my wife Betty's mom took ill, we relocated to Orange County. And it was during this time in our lives that I converted to Catholicism. Once my eyes were opened to the truth, I couldn't learn enough about the faith. But I had less free time than ever, especially with a long commute. That's when I discovered the real value of Catholic audio. Listening to cassette tapes transformed my daily commute into a miniature retreat. And that's the beauty of Virgin Most Powerful Radio today. Since the podcasts are archived, you can listen anytime on our smartphone app. I know how listening to Catholic audio can bring you closer to Christ and His Church. So I encourage you to visit the App Store or go to vmpr.org and download the app today. It just might change your life. I'm Matthew Arnold for Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
Virgin Most Powerful Radio, sharing the gospel with clarity and charity.
I'm a soldier for